20 years ago, Vladimir Putin issued a warning. Almost no one listened. Western leaders dismissed it as bluff. Kiev treated it as an empty threat. Analysts filed it away as rhetorical posturing. But now, at the end of January, the world is watching that warning come true in real time. Russian armored columns are preparing to move toward Odessa. Airstrikes are systematically dismantling military infrastructure across the Black Sea coast. Emergency meetings are unfolding in Chisinau and Bucharest, as officials ask a single terrifying question: is it already too late to stop what's coming? Because what is unfolding is not just another phase of the war in Ukraine. It is the execution of a plan that was designed decades ago. And if it succeeds, the geopolitical map of Europe will be permanently altered. Stay with us until the end, because what you are about to hear explains why Odessa was never the real objective, and why the Black Sea is about to become the center of a new world order. Putin's warning, a promise. 20 years in the making. More than 20 years ago, Vladimir Putin made a statement that went largely unnoticed outside intelligence circles. He declared that Russia would never abandon its people, and that it would secure a reliable land corridor to the Russian military group stationed in Transnistria. At the time, it sounded abstract, almost theoretical. But today, that statement reads less like rhetoric and more like a blueprint, because the creation of a corridor from Crimea through southern Ukraine, to Transnistria, was not a reaction to the current war. It was the objective from the very first day. The map that explains everything. To understand the scale of what is happening, you need to look at the geography. From Crimea, through Kherson and Mykolaiv, to the Moldovan border, stretches roughly 200 kilometers of coastline. That strip must be fully seized. Cleared of Ukrainian forces. Supplied with rear logistics, reinforced with air defense, and turned into a defensive line capable of deterring NATO intervention. It is a massive undertaking, but Moscow believes it is achievable, and soon. Why? Because Russia holds 3 decisive advantages. The 3 cards Moscow is playing first: absolute air superiority over Odessa and the surrounding region. Ukrainian air defenses in the south have been systematically degraded. Radar sites, missile batteries, and command centers have been targeted with precision. Second, a shattered Ukrainian transport network. Bridges, rail hubs, and supply corridors have been destroyed or rendered unusable. Ukraine physically cannot shift large reserves to the south anymore. Third, a reserve force of approximately 150,000 combat-ready troops. These are not conscripts. They are rested, rotated, re-equipped units prepared for multi-directional assault. And this leads to the question we'll return to shortly. What if Russia doesn't just advance on Odessa by land, but launches a major amphibious operation to cut off all retreat? Keep that thought. November 2025, the moment the strategy went public. In November 2025, a series of attacks on Russian oil tankers occurred near Turkish waters. Putin responded with a blunt statement: Ukraine will be cut off from the sea. Many assumed this was an emotional response. It wasn't. It was an open declaration of intent. From that moment, Russia's aerospace forces began a methodical, almost surgical campaign against every critical military asset in the Odessa region. Ports, air defense nodes, radar stations, ammunition depots, command centers, cruise missiles, and guided bombs reduced them to rubble. Commercial shipping followed. Tankers and cargo ships heading to Ukrainian ports became legitimate targets. Insurance companies withdrew coverage. Global. Maritime trade with Ukraine effectively collapsed. This was Phase 1. Phase 2. Cutting the region in half. The second phase began with strikes on 2 critical bridges near Mayaki and Zatoka. These bridges connected northern and southern Odessa Oblast. Their destruction split the region into two isolated zones, separated by a wide estuary. Picture the map. Ukrainian main forces in the north. Coastal reserves in the south, now separated. Unable to reinforce one another, unable to maneuver under fire. Ukraine faced an impossible choice. Abandon southern forces, or attempt a maritime evacuation under Russian air dominance. Either option meant disaster. This is classic encirclement doctrine, and it works, especially when one side controls the sky. While Ukrainian defense is collapsing in the south, according to insider sources, Russia has 150,000 troops earmarked for the Odessa direction. Half are positioned to advance westward from the Kherson bridgehead along the coast. The other half are capable of conducting a limited amphibious landing south of Odessa, opening a second front behind Ukrainian lines. At the same time, Ukraine is under pressure everywhere. Donbass, Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia. There are no reserves left to shift south. Kyiv is plugging holes, but the holes are multiplying faster than the manpower. Opening a new, massive southern front is not just a challenge. It is a catastrophe. What Russia gains by taking Odessa. Odessa is not just a city. It is the key to the northern Black Sea. If Russia secures the coastline from Crimea to Transnistria, Ukraine becomes landlocked, maritime trade ends, economic independence collapses. 90% of global trade moves by sea. Cut a country off from the sea, and you don't just weaken it, you cripple it. Ukraine, without access to the Black Sea, becomes dependent on overland routes through Poland and Romania, routes that can be closed, pressured, or politicized at any moment. This is economic suffocation. The military consequences for Europe. But the economic impact is only half the story. Control of the coast allows Russia to deploy forces capable of reaching the borders of Romania and Moldova within hours. For NATO, this is seismic. For years, Ukraine served as a geographic buffer. That buffer is disappearing. Russian forces would stand just kilometers from NATO territory. And when tanks sit at your border, words carry weight. This is not propaganda. It is military logic, the encirclement scenario. Now let's return to the question we planted earlier. What if Russia doesn't storm Odessa from land alone? Imagine this. Russian forces advance from the east through Mykolaiv, fixing Ukrainian defenses in place. Simultaneously, amphibious units land south of Odessa on lightly defended beaches, cutting off retreat routes. Aviation strikes roads, bridges, and railways. The Odessa group is surrounded on three sides. See behind them. Encirclement complete. Ukraine then faces three options. 1. Break out at catastrophic cost. 2. Surrender, politically unacceptable. 3. Attempt evacuation by sea, under air dominance. History shows what happens to armies trapped against the sea. Dunkirk was an exception, and only because German tanks stopped. This time, there would be no such order. Moldova panics. And for good reason, Moldova understands exactly what this means. The moment Russia connects with Transnistria, Moscow gains full control of Moldova's eastern border. Transnistria ceases to be an isolated enclave. It becomes a fully supplied military outpost. Equipment, troops, air defenses, missile systems. Moldova's sovereignty becomes theoretical. With strong pro-Russian sentiment inside the country, political realignment, or even absorption into Moscow's sphere becomes plausible. Romania and NATO, no good options. Romania is mobilizing forces near the Moldovan border. Bucharest sees two nightmare scenarios. Scenario 1, Moldova aligns with Moscow, ending any hope of Romanian reunification with Bessarabia. Scenario 2, Russia continues west, forcing Romania to fight or concede. There is no third option. NATO is holding emergency meetings, but unity is gone. France and Germany oppose direct war. Poland and the Baltics demand action. Romania hesitates. The U.S. watches cautiously, preoccupied elsewhere. Why this was always the goal? Why was the corridor to Transnistria always the objective? Because Russia is not fighting for land. It is fighting for strategic depth, security zones, and control of critical corridors. The Black Sea coast is not just geography, it is leverage. It controls access from the Mediterranean. It pressures Turkey, Romania, Bulgaria. It defines dominance in southeastern Europe. This has been Russian strategy since the 15th century. Putin is continuing it with 21st century tools. Timeline: how fast can this happen? Based on recent operational tempo, analysts estimate 4 to 8 weeks from the start of the active phase to reaching the Moldovan border. This is not blitzkrieg. It is systematic conquest, town by town, road by road, total control. Ukraine lacks the resources to stop it. The irreversible shift. If Russia completes this corridor, Europe's post-Cold War security system collapses, buffer states disappear, NATO strategy must be rewritten. Sanctions are exposed as ineffective. Russia reemerges as a dominant continental power. Ukraine loses its future as a maritime state. Moldova. February 1st, the decision point. According to unconfirmed military sources, February 1st may mark the start of the decisive phase. Reconnaissance is underway. Equipment is moving. Artillery preparation is reported. If this is true, the world will soon see how fast a major city can fall. Because Odessa is more than a city. It is a symbol. Its fall would signal that the war's outcome is no longer in doubt, and that Europe has entered a new era, whether it wants to or not. Write your prediction in the comments, because the next few days may redefine the continent for decades to come.